Hello and very warm welcome to Weekly Current Affairs. Today is Saturday and I'll be taking up the miscellaneous components, and my name is Madhusudan Reddy. As you all know, this is a series from Monday to Saturday where we take up weekly current affairs of one particular subject and we explain it in detail. And on Saturdays, I'll be taking up miscellaneous components that are very much important and relevant for UPSC but not have been covered in other subjects or other days. So let us quickly get into today's articles. We are going to deal with three different articles. The first article is a down-to-earth published article, and the second one is a report that has been recently released by the World Wildlife Fund, and the third one, to understand these two articles you need to have a basic understanding in the concept behind these articles, right? So firstly, let me give you a brief. What are we going to learn here? We are going to learn about the report, the importance of this report, what exactly is said in this report, and the current relevance and the exam relevance of this. And secondly, we'll be going forward for the patent laws in India. How are the patent laws? And recently, one of the patent who have applied for the patent laws, the compulsory licensing, has passed away. That had made a good decent news, and because of that, the Supreme Court has taken a suo motu case in this context. So let us see the laws that are associated with patent laws and also with respect to compulsory licensing, right? So let us quickly get into the topics. Our first article for today will be taking up the Living Planet report. In the Living Planet report, there are news articles that when this report came up, it said that around 69% of the total population that is present in the form of biodiversity, including mammals, fishes, corals, even underwater life forms and the life forms in the air, on the terrestrial, all these life forms, they have reduced their population by 69%. This is what the report says. Now in this due process, why did this happen and what are the time period that has been taken into account in this report? All these things we are going to see. Now firstly, let me directly take you to the page, the World Wildlife Fund report itself. It says that the size of the population since 1970, if you see, on a drastic level, it has dropped to 60% droppage here. Okay. Now, why is this drop? We have to look forward for this for the mains examination, and for the prelims examination, those species that have been reported in this report. There are special mentions about few different species in this report. So we should also look into those report and understand the significance. And firstly, let me tell you, this is the Living Planet report, or there is also an index called Living Planet Index. In this, they'll measure the biodiversity that is present, and this is a yearly report. Every year the report comes, and there are some changes from last year also. You'll also get to see the changes with respect to 1950, 1970 onwards. So the fundamental basis for the formulations of this report, or the relative area, is from 1970 onwards. And it says that ये comprehensive study है, एक global study है, सारे species को इन्होंने पढ़ा था. Around 32,000 species they have taken into consideration. Out of these 32,000 species, near about 60% of the population is already lost. And this report also clearly talks about why are we losing the nature, why we need a healthy planet, and how we can fix it and what we can do. So here it also gives you a way forward, क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, and also it also talks about the conservation methodologies. And overall, it talks about there are some changes that have been seen in only few particular areas. The drastic change is concentrated in some parts of the world only. So before we get into all of these, let me quickly show you कहाँ पे कितना percentage drop है in terms of the biodiversity loss. So here it clearly explains that the loss of biodiversity is highest in the Latin America, and nextly it is in Africa, and next to that it is Australia. You look here, the biodiversity loss is less in North America and Asia. You need to ask why. Why is the biodiversity loss less in Asia and Africa? In simple terms, usually the genetic diversity or the species diversity is usually less in these areas as compared to other areas. So if there is any chance of survival, or if there is any chance of change in these areas, it will be the South Latin America as well as Africa, right? And coming to the Australia, most of the aquatic life changes that you'll get to see, it is in Africa itself, right? The aquatic life changes in the recent times, you might have heard about the changes into the coral reefs, that are also taken into account. And similarly, Amazon forests as well as the African changes, all these are taken into considerations. So earlier the perception was that the rate of change of biodiversity is very much impacted in the polar regions. But now this report says that the rate is similarly equal, and it is in fact wherever you find more diversity, the rate of change of this diversity or the declining population is more in the tropical areas itself, right? And let me also take you to the area what exactly this report talks about and what do they deal with this. What are the things that are taken into account while taking up this report? See, firstly, this report takes into account few components. Now it is given in the form of living planet index. ठीक है, ये living planet index में they track the species of around 32,000 varied species. It is also called as LPI report. All this else falana. But that is not much important. Our important area for exam is this. ठीक है, this is the area which says that there are mammals, there are birds, fish, reptiles and amphibians. That means anything, any species, living species present on the earth is also accounted for, right? And from when this report is being given, this report takes into account from 1970 onwards, right? And also let us quickly see what this report has to say. And this report has a special mention. It has a special mention about an emergency. It says that there is an emergency. That emergency is called dual emergency. Now what is this dual emergency? See, dual emergency is nothing but you also have a climatic crisis on one side, on the other side there is loss of biodiversity. So it is a double whammy where the natural resources, natural services and the natural capitals which are there, they are depleting at a faster rate. So on one side the climate is changing, on the other side the biodiversity loss is also very high. So in between where you see the natural sciences which acts as in the form of your services, your capital as well as resources, all these things are also depleting at a faster rate. Now first let us quickly understand what exactly do you mean by these natural services and natural resources and natural capital. See here, by nature we already have air, water, you also have land, you also have soil. Now these things are called as natural capitals. Okay. Now this natural capital is also a collective entity of a natural resource and a natural service. Your natural resources can be anything of water, minerals or any component that has economic value within it and which can help in surviving of the humans. Now these natural resources are always filtered by the natural services. Natural services are simple terms, but in terms of if you have your air it can be purified, it can be polluted and also it can have a climatic control. For example, if you are having air as a natural capital, right, this natural capital, it can get filtered through some services. Now what are these services? These services are called as natural services. So for every natural resources, for every natural capital which you will have, you will also have a natural service within it. So these natural services are very, very important for us. If you start to degrade these natural services, you will have a double whammy. Now this double whammy is nothing but, imagine this is your air. The report talks that इस air को आप pollute करते हो. One side there will be climate change. On the other side you will also find biodiversity loss. So this is just an example. Now include, instead of air, you think of the biodiversity itself. You can also talk about land. You can also talk about the natural capitals of various types, right? Every now and then you change these components, it will also impact the climate change component and the biodiversity also. So currently this report says that there are drastic changes which you will get to see in the both climate change area as well as the biodiversity loss. This is called as dual emergency in climate terms, right? Now this is the concept of your natural capital, natural resources and natural services. So in simple terms, if you take the sunlight or the solar energy, this is what is your natural resource. It is also a natural capital as well, and that can be filtered out. If you start to filter out this sunlight in the form of clouds, pollution and all, you will see some kind of climate changes, right? Now let's go back and see what exactly the report tells about these natural services. It says that there are some areas where these natural services are getting depleted. Okay. Now in the form of pollution also, in India also they have talked about the mangroves. Mangrove का population अगर कम हो गया तो life forms which are present in those areas, they are going to get depleted. Special mention to India is also there, and special mention to the mangroves in India, especially the mangroves that are present in the Sundarban area are depleting. Near about 37% of the mangroves have been depleted in the last decade or so. So the diagram which you see on the screen, it clearly explains what kind of changes you will get to see. See, for example, a natural capital or a natural asset can be your atmosphere हो सकता है, fresh water हो सकता है, oceans या land, soil, anything that you find it naturally. Now they will have services. These services are nothing but the pollination is a service, biomass is a service, water purification is a service. When you start to capitalize this, when you start to use this to make it a capital, you can get a good food, you can get good fiber, good crops, clean water bhi ho sakta hai. All of this lives in an ecosystem tandem. If you disturb this ecosystem tandem, there will be double whammy. This is what the report says. Let's go back and see what exactly are the reasons for the changes in this double whammy. See, it clearly talks about the changes that you're going to get to see. It is because of changes in the land use and sea use. And they have a special mention to kelp forest. See, kelp forests are those forests which are present in the temperate region. They act as corals for the temperate region. It is said that in the recent times, because of the heat waves, the kelp forests which are present in the temperate region, their depletion started, because of which the sea otters and the sea urchins which are there, sea otters started to move away and sea urchins started to rise their number. And over a period, it also mentions about the mangroves. So mangroves also turns out to be important. In a couple of minutes, we will also discuss about mangroves here. But see here, it has specific reasons. Now what are these reasons? These reasons are basically, you can classify into 5 different types of reasons. These are the 5 reasons which played a fundamental role in depleting the natural resources as well as the biodiversity. The first one is changing the land use pattern. So most of the lands which are utilized for the forest, they have been cut down, and that is now being utilized for the agriculture. So agriculturalization of the forest lands is considered to be a biggest threat. That is number 1. Number 2, direct exploitation of the organisms. See, the direct exploitation of the organisms, in simple terms, it means that it says that the hunting, poaching, various other economic uses of the species that are present in the wildlife. So this report also says जहाँ जहाँ पे strict laws है, that area the laws are protecting the species, but those areas where you have weaker laws, weaker boundaries, weaker management of the forest, there the loss is very high. So whole in all, it categorizes India into a positive area where we have strict laws for our environment, and it also gives credit to the Project Tiger, and it also gives credit to few other projects like Project Elephant bhi hai, Great Indian Bustard Project bhi hai. It is also praising the Cheetah Project. So India has a good praising in this Living Planet report. Nextly, the next reason they say that it is climate change. Of course, climate change is a change for everyone. It is a problem to everyone. It is like a COVID. Until everyone cures, no one is safe. Right? No one is safe until everyone is safe. This is the fundamental idea. And it also says that climate change is a problem which is common to everyone. Same wording which has been used in the previous reports, again they have used it here. They say that climate change is a problem to everyone until the climate change as a fundamental problem, it is not addressed through the Paris climate agreements and increasing the funding to the various funding mechanisms in the Clean Development Fund. It is very difficult for the tropical areas, especially the lower developed nations as well as the developing nations, to manage and cater the natural resources with respect to natural services. So it is very important. The report says that we have to give funding to these areas. And the next one is pollution. And see, pollution has a special mention from nitrogen and as well as the other ammonia gases which have been utilized by the fertilizers. So here it says that the excessive use of the fertilizers in the land, it also starts to pollute the soil and the sea. Okay. See, how is this sea getting polluted because of excessive fertilizers? In simple terms, there is an example of case study in which they mentioned that across the coastal areas, the excessive utilization of the fertilizers which they are using it, that has been leached into the coastal areas. Since 1970 onwards, these coastal areas over a period, they lost their fertility, especially because of the usage of these fertilizers, and the salinity component also there is some variation. And the last one is introduction of the invasive species. Now what do you mean by invasive species? Invasive species are those species which are not native to that particular area. For example, you talk about eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is not native to India. Okay. If you see the pigeon is not native to India. Seamai caruvelum, it is a plant which is called as kikad in Hindi. This is not native to India. It has been bought by the Britishers to demarcate the territories across the area of their provinces. So over a period, this has spread across India, and on these species usually you will not find the native species, that is flies, maybe animals which do not eat that particular plant. Okay. So that is the dangerous activity of the invasive species. And in India also you have sizable number of invasive species which are not native to that particular area. So this report talks about solutions also. क्या करना चाहिए अगर if you are having changing in the land uses, land use के लिए कैसे change करना चाहिए? Instead of you converting a forest into a directly a agriculture land, it says that use the COMPA, that is compensatory afforestation fund management, to deal with these land use changes. And the recommendation which it gives for the exploitation of organisms is effective implementation of the laws. So here it has a special mention to the Kaziranga National Park, because in the recent times Kaziranga National Park, it was an area of hunting, it is a paradise for hunters. But in the recent times, क्या किया था Kaziranga National Park, it has bordered, they started to use the border mechanisms, border management systems of forest. So technology utilization should be there in monitoring these aspects. The next one is climate change. Again they gave significance for the Paris climate deal. आगे हम क्या करना चाहिए? There are preventive methods and also there are promotive methods, curative methods also. So curative methods are those methods where stopping the rising of temperature from 1.5 degrees Celsius beyond the 2100, and they also say that we have to go for mitigation methods and also at the same time decrease the percentage of coal which have been used. Pollution, graded action planning, ये mention किया गया था. All in all, India has a special mention to this. We can utilize this report for multiple purposes. Right, now this is what the report says. Let us quickly move to the next article. This next article talks about, just a minute. So one last point which is mentioned in this article is the mangroves here. See, mangroves क्या है? Indian mangroves, especially the Sundarban mangroves, their population has been decreased by 37 odd %. So ये क्यों हुआ? They say that because of excessive inundation of river courses changes, ये natural reason है, and man-made reasons are the mangroves are being converted for agriculture utilizations and aquacultures. So aquaculture is also one of the reason in this area for the degradation of the mangroves. And natural reasons like tsunami and all, they also cater to the depletion of mangroves, this report says. So let us quickly see इंडिया में मैंग्रोव्स कहाँ पे प्रेजेंट है. ये प्रीलिम्स के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट भी बन सकता है. वन, मैंग्रोव्स ऑफ गुजरात. ठीक है, when you come down, Ratnagiri mangroves, this is in near to Mangaluru, Goa area. And the third one you will get to see in the Kaveri Delta region, Krishna Godavari Delta, Mahanadi Godavari Delta and Sundarbans. Of all of this, of the total global mangroves, India has near about 7% of the total mangroves of the total mangroves of the world. Okay, 7% of the total global mangroves, and these mangroves are considered to be ecotones. ठीक है, ये एक ecotone है, right? Let us quickly move to the next article, because mangroves we have already dealt many number of times, uska significance and all. So I'll not waste much of your time. Let us quickly move to this article. See, this article, let me give you a background first. See, this article says that despite writ petitions of dying patent, there has not been any kind of responses by the government side. Firstly, let me tell you the background here. There was a patient who was suffering from one of a chronic diseases, and it is a cancer. In order to deal deal with this patient, the patient did not have much of an economic support. So what she requested is that the medicines which she is using, the medicines are too costly for her, near about 2 lakh rupees per month. So she went to the one of a high court in that local area and in the Kerala. She said that I am not able to buy these medicines, and there is a provision in the central government where that medicine can be made to give compulsory licensing so that other manufacturers can also manufacture, and then the cost of the production and the cost of that medicine will come down so that I can go for affording that medicine. So this is what the article talks about. But did the Supreme Court do it, or what are the provisions that the government has within itself to deal with these kind of situations? That the focus here should be of compulsory licensing. So this article we are going to discuss the compulsory licensing kya hai, and then the central government's act which is given as the Patent Rights Act of 1970 and section 92, and when and where the central government can go for a compulsory licensing. So before this, let us try to understand the situation during the COVID time period. See, COVID time period pe, though the medicine is being manufactured by the Serum Technologies or Bharat Biotech, they are manufactured only by these companies, and these companies, what they have done is they have given voluntary license to some other companies. ठीक है, and only जिस company को license मिला, those companies were able to produce. Now just imagine, had if that COVID vaccine was given to every manufacturer and every manufacturer can produce, wouldn't that be very easy for the entire global vaccination? Right? It would have been really easy. But did this happen the same way? The answer is no. Why? Because for developing that vaccine, the company has put in so much of effort, so much of R&D, and that gives a competitive spirit to get into the innovation and research and technologies. For any medicine to be developed, it takes near about 8 to 10 years for the development. But COVID time was an exception, and in this exceptional time periods, what happened was there are some emergency provisions. That emergency provisions have been invoked, and the National Disaster Management Act was there. So because of this, the companies had to move and make the product at a very faster rate, right? But in natural times and normal times, this won't happen. This won't be the rapid rate of development of a vaccine or rapid rate of development of a medicine. A medicine takes many years to develop, and for that particular company, it spends thousands of crores at times. So obviously, when you are a company and you are spending thousands of crores, would you be willing to give that license to all the other companies and they can produce that product and you get some kind of royalty? Or instead, you would be preferring that you will only produce and you will only sell. Across the globe, whoever wants to buy, they have to buy from me, and I will be deciding the price based on my expenditure of the research and also how much revenue I have to get and how much money I should get it in the next coming few years. So most of the companies, when they are going for a profitable entity, they go for a second methodology where they will be producing, they will be doing R&D, and their product they themselves want to manufacture at the price which they decide, right? But imagine if you have a product of 2 lakh rupees, near about if you have to spend 1.5 lakh rupees per a month, can everyone in India can they afford that? Of course the answer is no. So under these situations, where the patient cannot afford, but at the same time there can be profits that can be taken up by the company, there should be a mid path, right? Now this mid path is nothing but a Patent Rights Act, or the Patent Rights Act, which is given by the Indian Patents Act of 1970. Now this Indian Patent Act of 1970 says that it talks about the protection of the patents. Okay? Protection of the patents which are produced in India and elsewhere also. We have taken this from the TRIPS, Trade Related Intellectual Property Rights karke hai. We have taken it from the World Trade Organization. So any product you develop, you are given certain licenses, and these licenses you will only have that patent for a medicine near about, it varies from 3 years se lekar 20 years tak. When 3 years se 20 years, after 20 years, anyone who want, they can produce. On a simple note, if I have to tell you, you also use paracetamol 650. At times you might have also bought the Dolo 650, right? Paracetamol 650 bhi hai, Dolo 650 bhi hai. This Dolo 650 is near about 30-35 rupees, but paracetamol 650 is only 9 rupees or 8 rupees. The composition here is paracetamol is a generic medicine, whoever wants they can produce. But Dolo, it's produced by one particular company. So when a company produces, it always wants to go for profits and it wants to incur the cost of research and development, right? But when the license is given to everyone and made compulsory, that is called as compulsory, and all the companies can produce, at which the product turns out to be cheaper, right? Now these patents are protected under the Patents Act of 1970, and section 92 of the Patents Act makes it very clear what kind of license need to be given. See, now there are two different kinds of licenses. The first one is compulsory licensing, and the second one is voluntary license. Now what is the difference between this compulsory license and voluntary licensing? Compulsory licensing means you as a company have produced one product, and this product will be given to everyone whoever wants to produce, and many other manufacturers, what do? If these are manufacturers, they will pay you the royalty, okay, but the cost of the product will be cheaper. And the other one is voluntary licensing. Is suppose you have developed a product, and this product you choose to whom you wanted to give it to. For example, I am Bharat Biotech and I developed a particular vaccine, and I only wanted to choose 2 or 3 companies and I wanted to give them the licenses they can produce. It is an internal deal, right? It is your voluntary licensing. Voluntary licensing is confined only to the manufacturer itself, the original patent owner, right? Now let us look into the case, what exactly this case was talking about. It says that the product which is not in an affordable area, that product should be made affordable so that her life could have been saved. So when a lawyer came in and said that the patent has been passed away, so the judge summarily took that case and then verifying for that case. So in this due process, who gives the compulsory licensing? What are the authorities that are involved? See, the compulsory licensing is issued by the central government itself. The central government can issue the compulsory licensing under many circumstances. The first circumstances is under the section 92. Okay, let us see. Just a minute. So the Indian Patent Act of 1970, there are some amendments in 2005. What did they do is they amended the section 92A and section 92, along with that section 84. So in the section 92 they say that any time after the grant of the patent is, if a patent is granted to you, after that any time the government can invoke a compulsory licensing under few circumstances. The first circumstances here, it is for section 92 clause 3 के नीचे national emergency, when there is national emergency, or else extreme urgency, or public non-commercial uses for diseases like AIDS or HIV, TB, malaria. If this is a pandemic and it creates a economic loss and a fundamental loss of human lives, that can also be, the government can also declare. So under the clause of public health crisis, or whenever a patent, if a patient is not in a position to buy that medicines, what does the government do? The government usually go for philanthropy activities. They tie up with some pharmaceutical companies, and under the CSR projects they are going to give the medicines at a cheaper cost. But is it a solution? The answer is no. It can be only a remedy for sometimes, but solution always lies in getting the best products at a cheaper rate. Whenever the production is mass, the product gets cheaper and this product can be utilized. So the government, what does it do is, it can also grant these patents under certain other circumstances as well. The first circumstances I have told you, that is section 92. Now let us see the section 92A. What does section 92 say? It says that it can also give compulsory licensing whenever a patient is not in a position to afford that products. So under these clauses, they have said that the court has directed the central government to look after. Now why did the court direct the central government? It is because the court said central government to go and look into this matter, because it is the agency, the central agency, which is the central government under the DPIIT, that is Department of Industrial Promotion, and the ministry which is associated, that is the one which is going to take care of the compulsory licensing. So under this, let us quickly see the differences between section 84 and section 92 of the compulsory licensing. See, whenever a patent is given under the section 84, usually the waiting period is only 3 years. For suppose you are given a patent, and this patent after 3 years it can be given compulsory licensing. But when it goes to section 92, there is no clause. Anytime the government can invoke compulsory licensing on it. But compulsory licensing, when it is invoked, obviously the patent will get the royalty. So see here, the woman has taken the route of section 92. Look here, section 92, under the same clauses, you also have the clause for national emergency. You also have the clauses for extreme urgency. That extreme urgency is not defined here, and also the public non-commercial use. This is also not defined. On the other side, you also have insufficient. If you have insufficient or no manufacturing capacity to address under those circumstances, and also whenever the patient is not in a position to utilize that product or buy that product, in that conditions also you can. Now under these circumstances, the government do not need any waiting period. Okay? The government do not need any waiting period. So simply under these circumstances, the government can invoke. The court has directed, you can do this through this means. So finally, here the court has given directions to the central government, and the central government is now looking into this case. Now let us quickly see the furthermore differences on the grounds of reasonable requirements in the case of section 84, or when the price is not in an affordable manner, or else in terms of the territory, when the product is not used in the territory. That means if this product is produced somewhere and the product is very costly and the patient is not in a position to afford that, then it can be. So in the recent times, the example can be your imatinib and Gleevec. So in the current affairs, we also got to see the national essential medicines which are recently in news. That should also be, some of the products need also be put into the national essential medicine list, because though the cancerous drugs are there, these cancerous drugs, at times they are cheaper, at times they are costly. So if this costly drugs, when they are given compulsory licensing and the royalty to the patients or the patent owners, it is said that the court has directed on a holistic level, you can also do philanthropy, and at the same time you can also earn little more extra money, right? But we don't know how far this is true in terms of practical implementation. So let us, only time tells us. And this is it for today. In the next week, we are going to come up with more relevant articles, and if you have doubts regarding any of the topics which have been discussed here, you can message me. This is my contact number. Any doubts regarding these topics, I'll be happy to answer to you. Thank you guys, and see you next week. If you have liked this session, please make sure to like us, and it will be motivating to us to come up with more relevant articles. Thank you and see you.